Alright, hey everyone, how's it going? So, Dragonflight has been out for about 2 weeks now. We're coming up on the opening of Season 1, and I just wanted to go through and give my first impressions of the expansion so far. I'm a little bit more conflicted than I think most people really are. I have a few issues with it. Like, overall, I'm having a very good time, but there are a few pain points for me, and there are a few things that are getting praised a lot that I just really can't agree with that much. So this will be an interesting video. Starting off with the zones, these zones are really good. This is very redundant at this point. Every WoW expansion has really good zones, even Shadowlands, the most universally hated expansion, has really great zones, at least initially. But these zones in Dragonflight are so much better than those, and they're better than the zones we've been getting for a while now. And I honestly think that comes down to the openness of the zones. The art direction is also really good, and they look good. I like them. Azure Span may end up being my favorite zone in all of World of Warcraft. We'll see about that, but I love the aesthetic. But I think really what makes these zones so good is the openness and verticality of it. For the past few expansions, everything has felt very claustrophobic, as in like in BFA, to some extent Legion, but definitely in Shadowlands as well. Everything felt very closed in and tight, and everything felt like a curated play space instead of a open world. It didn't really feel like I was exploring Azeroth. It felt like I was exploring, oh, here's this new zone made by the WoW dev team. And they were good, they were fun, I liked them, but I love this return to openness. It's one of those things that when I was playing Lord of the Rings Online, I kept being like, oh god, I wish WoW would embrace this, dude. Because they're so big, the zones are so massive. And a lot of the time, it's mundane in Lord of the Rings Online, but it really sells you on the fantasy of being in Middle-earth, and I think these zones do very much the same thing just by committing to that scale, which is largely enabled by dragon riding, and it's just great. It's great. There's not that much else to be said on it, just the openness really makes the world more believable, and that combined with spectacular art direction, it just makes this incredible. There are also a lot more verticality due to dragon riding, so you have a lot more heights and a lot more interesting design. It actually reminds me a fair bit of Storm Peaks, where the introduction of flying early on allows the zone to have this insane sense of scale, and that verticality really complements it. So yeah, these zones are fantastic. I absolutely adore them. They took a second to grow on me, but they got there. So since I've alluded to it, let's go ahead and talk about dragon riding, because it is way better than it has any right to be. I wasn't that excited for it going into the expansion. I thought it would be cool, fine, fun, whatever. But I'm actually very much blown away by it. It is really cool and really fun. Like, first off, I am blown away that they managed to implement this system into WoW, given that WoW is like 15 years old. Also, like, my former experience with this is Lord of the Rings Online implementing War Seeds. And if you know anything about that game, you know that was a total disaster, and they're still really laggy and clunky and odd to control to this day. So I had my doubts. But they really made it just feel completely smooth and intuitive to control. The momentum-based stuff is really fun to mess with. I'm not as in love with it as other people are, but I've very much enjoyed it. I think it feels incredible. What actually makes dragon riding really cool to me is how it revolutionizes the core gameplay loop of WoW. Just going from one place to another, killing mobs and collecting things. It makes it so much more engaging, because not only are you going between places a lot faster, you actually are more engaged with what you're doing. And even if it's just a simple go up, fly over here, you're getting that sense of speed as you're building a momentum and your dragon glows blue and it's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going fast, cool. Not a very graceful explanation, but it's really cool and it's really well done. And it makes the whole process of questing way more engaging, which actually really benefits the leveling experience of this expansion. But before I get on the leveling, there is one minor issue with dragon riding, which we're going to have to deal with later down the line, but right now it's fine, which is dragon riding really invalidates old mounts. Of course, we all kind of knew this was going to happen going in. This was very much expected. But it is still an issue. It's still a thing. And already, just not even 2 weeks in, I am missing my old mounts, man. I like dragons. Dragons are cool. But, do I want to only ride 4 dragons for an entire expansion? No, not particularly. And yeah, so basically, if dragon riding was not specific to these mounts, I would not use these mounts ever again. Like, they would become just completely forgotten. And while for the moment that really isn't a huge issue, it's fine, it's kind of whatever. It sucks a little bit that I don't have the variety in mounts that I'm used to. For now, it's fine. But this is going to get a lot more annoying to me, I think, as the expansion goes on. Looking more into the future, dragon riding has been received exceedingly positively, so I don't know how they're going to go forward and not carry forward dragon riding and potentially even implement it into all the old zones, which is cool in concept. However, that raises the question of what the heck are we going to do with the hundreds of mounts that people have collected? And it's not an easy question to answer. You could go down the route of Guild Wars 2 and make different archetypes and give those archetypes different movesets, or you could just shove the dragon riding physics onto the mounts. I don't know how that would work for something like the Grove Warden or any of the rocket mounts. There's a lot of issues with it. I don't know how Blizzard is going to deal with it. I'm not going to spend too much time fretting about it because they'll figure something out, I guess, and I'll worry about it then. But already I am missing the variety in mounts. I love dragon riding, but it being limited to the same 4 dragons is a little underwhelming, and I'm not really a fan of it. But we'll see how that goes as the expansion develops, and what they decide to do with it after the fact, because at the moment, there's really not that much point in stressing about it. It is what it is, and we'll see what happens from here. Moving on from that, the leveling is actually really good this time around. I've already gotten 4 characters to max level, partially because I had nothing else really to do in these first 2 weeks of the expansion, but we'll circle back around to that. But yeah, I've done it 4 times, and I am not sick of it yet. It's fine. I'm not eager to go do it again, but I could if I had to. And that's largely, again, down to dragon riding. It just makes the leveling process that much more fun. It's really good. Obviously, it's not completely down to dragon riding. The quest flow is also really good. It's really well done. Ever since WoD, I'd say, they've really had that nailed down to a science. It has just been consistently good throughout. I haven't had any real issues with the leveling experiences since WoD, so this one follows suit, but it has the benefits of dragon riding, and combining the awesome quest design with the great zones and the awesome dragon riding, it's just really fun and really good to go through. So yeah, so far, leveling, top tier, I've really enjoyed it. Now we're going to get into some stuff that I'm not so keen on, starting with the story that takes you through these zones. Now, this is nowhere near Shadowlands' level of bad. Let's just get that out of the way. Shadowlands was abysmal. I don't know how they wrote that. I don't know who wrote that, but they should be ashamed. It was not good. And that goes mainly for the jailer and all that stuff and building it up as the expansion goes on. This feels way more grounded. It feels far more Azeroth, which I prefer. I just do. I like it more. I love the high fantasy stuff, but this stuff is really cool. Especially some of the stuff with Caligos I really liked. And there's a whole chapter at the end with what's the time dragon's name? Nosdormu. Yes, him. And you're traveling through time and all this stuff, and that section was exceedingly fun. I really, really liked that. However, on the whole, I have to say, the story has done nothing to really reinvigorate my interest in the Warcraft IP. I really lost all my interest in it, in the story and the universe and the narrative, since BFA. BFA had issues with the way its story was told, and Shadowlands completely undermined the stakes of the setting, and that's not great. And I was hopeful that, Dragonflight would win me back, it would convince me to care about this world again. But everything it showed was just aggressively mediocre. Maybe as time goes on, I will change my mind. As we get the patch cycle, this will all crescendo into something that's really cool, and I'll be like, alright guys, I'm back, I love the WoW story again. I hope that's the case, because I was very much into it. In WoD and Legion, random expansion picks, but that was when I really started looking deeper into the lore, and I really got into it, and I really liked it. And then that was just sort of squandered by BFA and Shadowlands. So hopefully, I'm just jaded, and I'll come around to it in time. But nothing the story did exceptionally stood out to me. It was just okay. It just existed, and it was fine. Which, hey, we're coming from Shadowlands. That is an improvement. But, again, it just really wasn't that standout. I'm just going to keep playing SWTOR as my MMO for story, and that's going to be that. There is one major issue I have with the way the story is done, and I think it just continues to speak to Blizzard, or at least modern Blizzard, really struggling to write good villains, because Razagath, oh my god, I don't they fell into every bad villain writing trap that I'm at a loss for words. I don't understand how they went from making the jailer to this. Because this dragon, Razagath, is like so similar to the jailer in that she's just posturing and not that competent and makes stupid decisions that just undermine her credibility as a villain. And with Razagath, the main way this is done is because she just refuses to kill anybody at all. So in the Dracthyr starting zone, she gets a clean opportunity to kill Rathian, but then just flies off and taunts him. In the Waking Shores, she gets the opportunity to kill Alexstrasza, and then doesn't. And then in the Azure Span, she gets the opportunity to kill Caligos, but then monologues instead. So it just... they have made her out to be a not very interesting, compelling, or threatening villain. I appreciate the fact that, they have understandable grievances with what the dragons did to them. That the Primos, that is. But, God, she is not a compelling villain. She does not seem threatening. I wish they had written her better, but these are like writing 101, and I'm just honestly baffled that they wrote it in this way, because she is just not a great villain, and I'm very disappointed by that fact. Like I said, there are highlights of this story. I do think there are parts of it that are good, that have potential. We'll see where they go with it as time goes on, but Razagath isn't a very inspiring villain, and the story overall is just kind of, it's fine. It's there. It's whatever. I'm gonna stop shitting on the story now. Moving on. So the music for this expansion, I unfortunately also found to be very okay. I've already turned the music off and I've started listening to my own music in the background. The one exception to this is the Centaur bass theme. It is just so good. The other song I really like is the Dragon Racing theme, but I'm actually kind of scared to play that one on YouTube because I'm pretty sure John Powell will copyright strike me. But besides those two tracks, everything about the soundtrack is just really forgettable and generic. It really does just feel like the music's trying to emulate things that came in the past, and it doesn't give these zones much of an identity, and most of these tracks I just forgot. All these tracks are good, they're like well made, they sound nice, they're pleasant to listen to, but there's just nothing really memorable. And maybe WoD has just ruined me because that's just such a perfect soundtrack, but yeah, this one did really nothing for me, and this is the first time I think I can ever say that for a WoW soundtrack. It was okay, it's good, it's fine, it didn't really make an impact, and that's that. So, moving on, one of the biggest selling points of this expansion is easily the big philosophy change that they had going into this, going out of the borrowed power era, as it's now being dubbed, and going into whatever this is going to be called, where it's very alt-friendly, very open, and very free. And this is just so much better. Like, it just is. Not having to do world quests every day to keep up with the power curve is amazing, although admittedly that was a thing in Shadowlands, but not having a Torghast equivalency, nothing like that. You just do the content you want to do, you play the game, you have fun, it's great. I have some issues with the content, which we're going to get to in a minute, but overall, this whole design change direction, I love it. The alt-friendliness is great, everything being, or not everything, but most everything being account-wide is wonderful, and the genuine freedom you feel in this endgame is awesome, because I don't feel like I need to be keeping up with things on my main. I can just do whatever I want. I can go do pointless things, and that's completely fine. Like, I've already gone around doing a bunch of stupid things that I normally wait until, like, a month or two into the expansion to do. Like, I already collected all the battle pets on the Dragon Isles. Normally, I don't do pet battles this early in the expansion because I'm worried about a million other things that I'm trying to keep up to date with. But this time around, there really just wasn't anything that I was super pressed to do, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go catch some battle pets. Why not? And I've had a good time with this launch experience. This has actually probably been the best launch experience out of any expansion probably ever, because it's so open, because it's so free, you can just do whatever you want, and there's plenty of things to do. But let's talk about that content, because this is where some of my issues are going to start cropping in. So I have seen a fair amount of praise for the Renown reps, and I'm gonna be honest, it genuinely baffles me. I don't understand how this is getting praised, because it is more of the same, except time-gated. And I thought, catch me up if I'm wrong on this, but I thought we didn't like time gating, Or maybe I'm just having a weird flashback to Legion or something, but like, I remember there was the whole thing of we don't like time gating, but now we're celebrating time gating. Yeah, I don't understand the praise of this system, of the renown system, of all this. I don't get it. Starting off with like the biggest blemish, the main thing that I have against what's been added is that the content's just not that interesting. It's world quests and a bunch of disconnected dailies. So I might make a video on this at some point, but I think the main thing that makes WoW world content work is selling the player on the fantasy of whatever they are doing, because world content in this game is not hard. It's not interesting. You're not like having any intense encounters. That's all for like dungeons, raids, and PvP. That's what's actually like engaging and interesting content. World content is just sort of mindless fodder that you do. But I think the thing that makes it fun, that makes it successful, that makes things like Isle of Thunder so cool, is when it immerses the player in the fantasy of the zone. Isle of Thunder is the perfect example of this. As you are coming into the zone, you're like doing these war objectives, you're pushing back the Mogu. I think that's who you were fighting in that, it's been a minute. But you're pushing them back, you're doing those dailies, you're coming back and you're helping the war effort. As time goes on, the zone expands, you unlock new stories, new daily hubs. But more importantly than getting new stuff, it's pushing the narrative of the zone forward. You're actually pushing closer up to the Throne of Thunder. Is that what it's called? The pinnacle of the storm? Whatever. But you're pushing up. You're like making progress. And it not only is satisfying because you're getting new content, you're getting new things to do, but because it's very thematically strong and fitting. And ever since WoD, they've had this weird idea that they need to just disconnect gameplay and narrative and just do whatever the hell they want to do. Just have a bunch of world quests strewn all over the place with very little narrative context, no effort to immerse the player in any kind of fantasy or anything like that. It's just a checklist. And that's okay, I guess, but like, it's really not that good. Easily, in the past couple years, the best has been Mechagon and Nazjatar, because they are actually hubs with personality. They just don't really evolve as you do things, besides maybe Mechagon, you could argue, but I still don't think we've reached the heights of Isle of Thunder yet. So, the content here is really not very interesting, or that, like, strong. You obviously have world quests strewn across the zone, which is as expected. But for each of the individual factions, you have a few activities. For the expedition, it's just unlocking different varieties of world quests, which, okay, but that falls into the previous category of just not really being that interesting. With the Centaur, you have the Grand Hunts, which are fine. I actually really like those. I think they are a good example of giving you something that thematically fits with that reputation. You're going out on a hunting party, and it's immersing you in that fantasy, right? And that's a really strong thing. I really like that. And then you have your camps for the Centaurs. I genuinely think the Centaurs are like probably the best reputation, because they actually have activities that immerse you in the culture of the Centaurs. You're going on these hunting things, you're helping out the Centaur camps. I really like that. In terms of Tuskarr, you have the community soup, and that's kind of it for them. And the community soup overstays its welcome. It's not very fun. Most of the time you just stand there waiting for the guy to give you orders, and I'm the Tuskarr guy. Well, I guess I'm not the Tuskarr guy. I guess there's like me, Taliesin, and Nixium all are like big Tuskarr fans, but whatever. I love Tuskarr. That's the point. I love Tuskarr. Like, they are my favorite race. I want them to be playable. I adore them so much. So for me to say that their event is like really boring and dull, that's a low blow, because oh god, if anyone would love it, it should be me, right? Like, I really like Tuskarr. I should like it, but it's just so boring and just not interesting. It's there. It's okay, whatever, I guess. Outside of the Centaurs, the activities really are not that good or thematically strong. And I find that extremely disappointing, because these reputations have a lot of personality. Like, I am so disappointed that the expedition is just finding treasure chests and doing world quests. Like, that is so lame, because it could be so much more, but that's all it is, and that sucks. I'm just really disappointed with the world content here. It inspires nothing in me. Like, it's better, like having the dragon riding incorporated into the world quests is great, but that's just because dragon riding's fun. Again, they are treating world quests and dailies and all these things as disconnected from the fantasy of repping up with a faction, when it should be integral to it. It should be very closely related, and they should directly feed into each other, and they don't here, and I'm not that impressed with the content. It's really just kind of dull and not that interesting, and I feel like I'm in the minority saying that, but hey, here we are. Now, the other issue with this is that the progression feels rather slow through these reputations. The renown ranks feel like they take a while to get through, and now obviously we're in the first 2 weeks, so you can't make that much progress. But this is largely down to the fact that you only get 2 sets of world quests a week, and they don't give like an insane amount of rep or anything, so it's going to take a minute to get through this, given that you don't get that many world quests to do. And that's turned into a whole debate. That's a separate video. I don't want to get into that now, but they either need to buff the rewards to where it feels more meaningful to do the world quests, or just have world quests be daily. I don't really see the issue with that. I guess I'm giving away my position, but that's a different thing. But yeah, these reps just really don't feel that rewarding to work towards, at least not to me. And that brings up the point of the infinite grinds, of which you can do for any of the factions. And they're awful. Oh my god. I did not realize we were going to have like so much regression in terms of reps. Good lord. So I'm not necessarily opposed to rep grinds through mob grinds. I think in some instances it can be fine. I think Cobalt Assembly is probably a decent example of that, because it didn't take too long to reach max rank with, and it had some unique stuff going on with like the Torghast-esque powers there, so that was okay. However, the infinite grinds and the mob grinds for the other factions are just so incredibly dull. Oh god. For each of these factions, they have their own infinite grind that just feels really, really, really unrewarding and not very good to go through. So you have mob grinding for Rathian and Sibelian. You have infinite fishing for the Tuskar. For the Expedition, you just have collecting treasure chests for little things that give you 25 rep a pop. It's just really not satisfying. And then the Maruk Centaur have just AFKing on Grand Hunts until you get enough rep. And it just... none of this is interesting. This is all extraordinarily degenerate gameplay, and I feel like that's been recognized by basically everyone. And there are people that like it, but they'll be like, yeah, it's degenerate. I don't get why. Why this is a thing, and we can't have daily world quests to make more meaningful progress. I genuinely am so baffled by these inclusions, and it's not fun. And maybe I'm alone on that. Maybe there are people that love having mob grinds to do, and I don't get it. I have made most of my way through the Rathian and Sibelian rep. I'm probably going to be able to finish that before Season 1's done, but just... It's very not fun. It's very not fun. None of the infinite grinds are fun. None of them feel that rewarding. So I really don't know why they're here. And it feels even worse when you're bottlenecked in terms of how much progress you're able to make through reasonable means, aka like doing world quests and like the main activities with the bulk of the rewards, as in like your first time doing the feast each week, your first time doing the Grand Hunt each week. It feels really, really bad that you get bottlenecked in that progress and you can't do anything else. And they're like, oh hey, we have these really unrewarding, really boring grinds you can do if you're bored instead. I really dislike them. I don't know why they're here. I don't really like it. I'm not a fan. I don't know that there's much more to say on that. The grinds are awful, and I really do not like them. That's kind of it. So overall, like, I think the world content is really lacking. I've seen it getting a fair amount of praise, which is fairly confusing to me, because it's kind of the exact same stuff we've always had, but less rewarding, and with mob grinds that are your main way of getting reputation if you want to play actively. It just... nothing about it feels good, and I really dislike what they're doing here. The factions themselves and the rewards are all cool. I like the factions. I like the rewards you get from them. I actually really like the renown track stuff too. I think that's a really awesome way to add in more levels, more rewards, and all that stuff to the reputations. I think that's awesome. But just, I don't get the way it's handled here. I think Korthia, Nazjatar, Mechagon, heck, even to some extent the N'Zoth Invasion dailies, all were better than this. This is not good. I don't know how else to say it. I'm sure I'll get lots of pushback for saying that. I'm sure plenty of people will disagree. It's very dull, boring, uninteresting content that is very dragged out, and it's very time gated because you can't make progress unless you want to do really boring grinds. And I'm just, not a fan. Moving on. So moving on to something a fair bit more positive, let's talk about the dungeons. I actually really like the dungeons so far. I think they're going to be rather fun. Obviously, we are looking at Mythic 0, so it's really hard to tell, but I love the aesthetics of these places. They're so cool. And most of the boss fights have like some interesting thing going on with them that I'm like, okay, well, I want to see how this goes on Mythic Plus. That's interesting. And that's exciting. There are two things that concern me, though. There are two things that I am very worried about in terms of getting to see these in Mythic Plus. One is the trash. There are so many things that seem like they are going to limit the amount of pulls you can do in Mythic Plus. Now, overall, is that the end of the world? No, not particularly, because generally you're doing reasonable pulls, not ridiculous pulls, unless you're in like a group of friends that are overgearing a little bit and you're doing some crazy shit. Based on my observation, and again, I haven't done Mythic Plus testing on beta or anything like that. I had access to beta, but I didn't do that. It seems iffy. It seems like there are a lot of interrupts, a lot of mechanics that you need to deal with in trash packs, sort of giving me BFA vibes, which is kind of scary. And it seems like it's going to limit how much you're going to be able to pull, how bad it's going to be, and like how that's going to feel in practice is going to be, I guess we'll see when that gets into Mythic Plus. We'll see where that lands. So that is a little concerning to me. There are a few bosses I have issues with and a few pacing issues throughout. The main boss, actually, is the end boss of the Azure Vault. Oh my god. As a melee person, this is... Oh god, I hate it. I hope to god they change this mechanic, because it is awful, and it is going to make me actively dread doing this key if this is still a thing when we get in Mythic Plus, which I have no doubt it will be. Basically, the mechanic is that you get a stacking movement debuff whenever you move. So if you move, you get a debuff. If you keep moving, it stacks. It lasts 10 seconds, and it can slow you down a whole heck of a lot. Now, as a melee player that obsessively moves at all times, that already kind of sucks, but you know what, it's fine. But the issue is that stacks don't drop off this. It is either you wait the entire 10 seconds and let all the stacks drop off, or you just keep getting more stacks. If you let it drop to like 1 second and then you move, the duration refreshes and you just get more stacks. Nothing changes there. It feels really bad. And that would all be fine, but the issue is the entire boss is predicated on you moving away from the boss, killing crystals, and then moving back into the boss. And this happens really frequently, so like I don't know how you're supposed to do this and not constantly be slowed. And it feels horrid. Like, it would be one thing if you just had to go out occasionally, but like even the crystals are spread out all over the place. So you're just stacking this stupid debuff, which means either you're gonna have to sit there at the boss, waiting for the ranged players to kill the crystals, and not being able to help, or you're gonna go out to the crystals, have 10 stacks or whatever of this movement debuff, and then just have to sit there for 10 seconds and not go attack the boss. Just like, I hate it. It's awful. Yeah, it's just one mechanic, it's just one boss. I'm sure I will learn to deal with it as the season goes on, but I am very much not a fan, and it just feels bad. It doesn't feel hard, it doesn't feel challenging, it doesn't feel interesting, it just feels bad. And that's really all there is to it, and I don't like that. And as far as the pacing issues go, there are a few dungeons that really exemplify this more than Uldaman. I really like this dungeon, it's really good. But then, between the second to last boss and the final boss, there is an absurdly long trash gauntlet. And I just don't know why? Like, it feels like there's a boss that's supposed to be in the middle of this. Like, there's a whole long section fighting, like, normal enemies, and you get frozen, and you fight a whole bunch of time dragons. Infinite Dragonflight, that's what they're actually called. But you fight them, and that's fine, but it feels like there's supposed to be a boss in the middle, because this is just an insanely long trash gauntlet, especially compared to the pace of bosses before this point, and it just doesn't feel that great. And there are, throughout it, like, a few sections where I really felt like some trash went on a little too long, or bosses were like back to back where it felt a little odd. I've kind of gotten used to it as the time's gone on, except for the Uldaman one, that's like the really egregious one. So I really enjoy the dungeons. I think aesthetically they are amazing. There are lots of interesting mechanics. I'm really excited to do them on Mythic Plus, but there are a few things that kind of concern me with it. But ultimately, we'll see once Season 1 comes out how I end up landing on that, because realistically, I can theorize about how it's going to feel while doing Mythic Zeros as much as I want to, but I'm not really going to be able to know how it feels until I get into those dungeons, until I actually do them on plus 15, plus 20 if I go that far this season, right? Like, I'm not going to know until I get there, so I will reserve judgment. Those are my concerns, but we'll see. So this has been a fairly controversial Dragonflight review so far, I'd say. I feel like there are a few opinions on here that I'm probably going to get crucified for having, especially since we're still in the honeymoon phase. So let's double down on that. Let's talk about professions, because I don't like these. I actually really dislike these. I think they are bad. And when I heard we were getting a profession revamp, I was excited because I thought, ooh, they're going to do something interesting with professions. And the answer is no, they are not. They are simply going to do the same thing, except make more steps in between everything, and it's just gonna be annoying. So, full cards on the table, I'm not someone who genuinely enjoys professions very much. I like fishing, and I like archaeology, but I think I like those because they are low stakes, and I don't really feel like I need to do them, and they're just kind of chill activities. So I like those, but I'm not really a fan of herbalism and mining and engineering and alchemy and all that stuff. I've always been an alchemist and herbalist on my main, just for that extra flash duration, and so I can be self-sufficient for doing dungeons and other activities. I can just always have my own stuff and not really need to go buy stuff off the auction house constantly. And I was very disappointed to find out that that really was not something I was going to be able to do this expansion, because there is so much investment in professions. They have done nothing to make them more interesting. At the end of the day, everything you're doing in these professions are the exact same things you have been doing in these professions since Classic. Nothing has changed. There is just way more grind attached now. There's way more steps, there's way more, in-between things, and I just am really not a fan. I would have loved to see something more original, something more interesting and more fun. I think a good example of this would be, Elder Scrolls Online and their excavation system. So for theirs, you actually have to scry the location of an object, and then you play a little minigame, and depending on how well you do on that minigame, you have more or less spots to search, so you're incentivized to do well. Then you go to those spots, you find the dig site, and then you play an excavation minigame that's actually kind of cool, and you unearth the relic, right? That's basically how it works. You find leads throughout the world, and it is a good way to incentivize you going back to old content, and yada yada yada. I really like this system, but it's not terribly complicated. It's just fun to engage with and fun to go search things out. In WoW, with these, no, it just is grinding. It's just so much grinding, and it's so mindless. It reminds me a lot of the stupid rep grinds. It's just uninteresting, boring things that you need to do. So ultimately, while there is more to do with professions, it is still the same thing, which is fundamentally uninteresting. If you get your kicks by going around and picking herbs, good for you, you will, love this, because there is more reason to pick herbs now, I guess, but I just really don't like it, and as someone who just wants to play the game, and just wants to engage with professions enough to be self-sufficient, that hurdle has been, raised significantly, to the point where I don't think I'm even going to cross it. I think I'm just going to buy stuff off the auction house. I am very much not a fan of what they did with this, because they fixed the wrong things about professions. To me, the issue with professions is that they were boring and uninteresting, not that they weren't grindy enough. But hey, people seem to like it, so maybe I'm in the minority with that opinion, and if everyone just wants really grindy professions, good for you guys, I guess. Enjoy. I don't understand you. Have fun. The other major aspect of this is the talent trees, and I don't get it. I don't get why people like this. This is another thing that's been praised to the high heavens, and I don't understand why. It just locks basic functionality behind these things, and, God. So I think probably one of the most egregious things about this, it's fine for the most part. It gets exceedingly grindy to get into other things, but again, that's more of an issue with me not liking the grindy nature of it. The stupidest thing about this, though, is that you can't refund the points. And, I get the fact that they want you to be locked in, that is your specialization, that's your identity. But I didn't know that initially, and I also didn't realize that on my Dracthyr, which is my gathering character, that I needed to go down a very specific part of the skill tree in order to get gathering while mounted. And I realized this after I had spent a boatload of points on another section of the tree, and then I found out I couldn't refund the points, and I was very not happy, let's say, but it took many more hours of just flying around, gathering herbs, until I could finally just do the thing I wanted to do in the first place. And yeah, niche case, I guess, but like I can't imagine that wouldn't happen to more people, right? Like, I play this game at not a super high level or anything, but like I'm in tune with the community. I look up guides. I know generally what's going on. I am very in tune with this game. So the fact that it caught me out is some poor guy just leveling his professions is going to figure this out way too late into the game and not have any way to refund and get to where he wants to be. And it just, that whole thing sucks. I hate that. And also, I just want to call out the user interface for these upgrade trees for being actually god-awful. It's really hard for just pure readability. Like, it works, it's functional, I guess, but like, just glancing at it, it's really hard to get a grasp of what exactly is going on and what you need to invest in and what each thing does. So, I really don't like that UI. I really don't like the specialization system in general. I think it's just not very great. But yeah, there's that. So yeah, I don't really like the profession system, this expansion. It's one of the main selling points, and I strongly dislike it. Maybe I'm weird because I come at this game from the perspective of just wanting to play the game and do the interesting content that I'm interested in, and not being super interested in like engaging with the economy and the community aspects of it as much as everyone else seems to be. I care about doing the dungeons and the raids. That's what I find fun. I just want to get to that point. And they have made it significantly harder to be self-sufficient in terms of getting flasks, potions, pots, what have you. And I'm not a fan of that, and especially given that they did it in the most boring way humanly possible, which is just making things more grindy. I consider this system a complete failure. I don't know why people like it, but hey, if you like it, more power to you, man. I'm glad that there are people that are seemingly enjoying it. That is awesome. I just don't see what everyone else sees in it. I would much rather it go down the direction of something like Elder Scrolls Online and make professions actually interesting to engage with. But hey, it is what it is. I'm glad people are enjoying it, and I'm just going to opt out and hopefully not lose too much gold buying flasks this expansion. Continuing down the path of controversy, let's talk about the talent trees, because everyone loves these. I think they're okay. I don't really have strong emotions towards them either way. I appreciate some of the talent choices that are, able to be made now. Some of the playstyles that have returned, I really like that. I play Enhancement Shaman, so we're supposed to have one of the best trees, so that's awesome. Maybe this is a me issue, but I've just found myself looking at guides, and I've experimented, right? I've done a few things where I was like, okay, well, I want to play with this, I want to play with this. But the reality is, there are things that are just so much better than other things, and I tried messing around with different builds, but the damage I did between them was like staggeringly different. So as much as I want to say, oh, this is really diversified the way you play the game, it's only done that if you don't care about your performance. And this is World of Warcraft. I think most people care about their performance. And maybe I'm wrong on that, but like I feel like that's the majority of people. Most people are like doing Mythic Plus and raids and yada yada yada. Like that is the bread and butter of this game. And this really isn't that interesting to me. Maybe I'm just like in that perfect middle ground to where I'm not high enough end to enjoy the theory crafting aspect of it, but I'm also not low enough end to just not really give a shit what I have. So I just don't really benefit from it at all. At the end of the day, I'm fine with it. It just seems like it sort of unnecessarily complicates things, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it is what it is. And when I was leveling up, I very often found myself not really caring that I got a new talent point, and I was just like, I don't know what the heck I'm supposed to get in it, it doesn't matter. Which I also don't think is great. So, I'm not a huge fan of it, I don't really have a huge issue with it, and I appreciate some of the gameplay styles that have come back, but yeah, not as sold on it as everyone else, but I do like it, so that's less controversial, just more, and I don't overly care. I think the final thing I need to touch on is the Dracthyr. I like these guys actually a fair bit more than I thought I would. I'm still not a fan of the art direction. I don't. It is cruel. It is absolutely cruel of the devs to give us these weird lanky fucks and then show us these awesome guys that I wish we got as a playable race instead. Like, why? These have been in the game since Classic and they're so cool. I just want to play as one of them, not one of these. But that aside, the art direction stuff aside, I quite like the way Evoker plays. Now, its core gameplay, I think, is rather dull. It's not very interesting. You're just like spamming Disintegrate. Okay, whatever. It's fine. But what I think is really cool about it is its position as like a semi-mobile range spec. Like, legitimately, hover has given me so much fun. It is like the entire reason I want to play this as my main alt and take it into Mythic Plus. Because when you get that whole, like, do your hover speed, you get, like, that buff, and you can cast while moving. And that is super fun to play with. It is so cool. It's like... So I love the mobility of ranged casters. I love it when you can cast on the move and all that jazz. BM does that, but it does it in, like, the most boring way possible, to where you don't have to think about it. You just do it. You don't have to manage your movement or anything. You just have unlimited movement. And I'm not really a fan of that. I like being engaged in the class that I'm playing. Like, that is a huge part of why I love WoW more than other MMOs, is because it's just very engaging to play. And I love that hover is something you actually have to manage. You actually have to be like, okay, do I want to use hover now? Am I using it as a mobility option, or am I using it so I can cast while moving, and maybe precast it so you can move out of a mechanic while using the flame? Like, I love that mechanic, and I'm looking forward to playing it in Mythic Plus solely because of it. The rotation itself is kind of the art direction is kind of but I've actually had a ton of fun with the Dracthyr because of that. So I am surprised at how much I've enjoyed the Dracthyr. So that pretty much covers everything in the expansion, I think. So overall, I feel like I'm a little more mixed on Dragonflight than I think most other people are. I've been hearing people singing its praises, and I'm glad that people are enjoying it. I'm really happy about that. I'm having a really good time with it. It's one of my favorite expansions in a while. I think I do like it. I definitely like it more than BFA. I think I like it more than Shadowlands. I think that's largely dependent on the Mythic Plus pool. If it's really fun, then it will beat Shadowlands in a heartbeat. But if it's not, it's going to be a competition between the two, because I really liked the Shadowlands dungeons. But yeah, I've had a really good time with it. I've really enjoyed it. I definitely think it is a way better direction for the game, just in terms of design philosophy and openness and alt friendliness and all that. It's just such a breath of fresh air in that regard. This is 100% the way it should be going. So I'm very excited to see where it goes. And if the raid and the dungeons live up to expectations and are all really fun, this is going to be a top tier expansion for me. But I am disappointed by the world content. I'm very disappointed by the world content. I was hoping that with these renowns being these huge elaborate selling features, that it would be really fun and engaging to go do. It really isn't to me. I was hoping the profession rework would be something that would get me interested in professions and I could actually like the system. No, it's more the same, and it just is more of a grind. But while I have my issues with the expansion, while there are things I don't think are great, I am genuinely excited to get into the dungeons and into the raid. I love the new zones, and more importantly than all of that at this point, I love the design philosophy. I wish we didn't have Cat Valor, that's the only thing I disagree with, but overall, I think it is a huge step in the right direction, and it is a really good expansion, and I do highly recommend it. I know I've probably come across a little negative in this, but I genuinely love this expansion. I've had a great time, and I am looking forward to continuing to have a great time for a while to come. I'm very much looking forward to Season 1 opening up on Tuesday. I am very hyped because Mythic Plus is my main content, so that is going to be extraordinarily fun. But yeah, I'm really excited to see where we go from here. I think we're going to have an Emerald Dream patch. I think that's almost, like, kind of soft confirmed by the right side of the Onaran Plains. Like, I think that's almost completely confirmed at this point. But I'm curious to see where they go from here. I really think the world content is the main thing that needs to be improved here, because it's really not that good. At least not in my opinion. And a few of the box features have just kind of let me down. But if we get some really good content patches that, like, have actual reputations that are really fun to do, then this is easily going to be one of the best expansions. Hands down. In fact, I think it already is. I think this is going to go down as one of the best expansions. I think this is what the community at large needed. I think this is a huge win for them. And it's a big win for me too, because I'm having a good time. So yeah, I am really liking Dragonflight. I'm really looking forward to the future. I have some issues, but overall, great expansion, really good time. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Shadowlands. I would love to know... Shadowlands? So anyway, those are my thoughts on Dragonflight. I would love to know what you all think of the expansion. Are you enjoying it? Are you loving it? Can you relate to some of the pain points I've had? Or am I just insane and you are loving the new profession system and you think the world content's awesome? Let me know in a comment down below. I'm actually really keen to see how people are reacting, because it's actually probably going to be positive, which is like a rarity for WoW comment sections. It's crazy. But yeah, I've had a really good time, and I hope you guys are too. Hey guys, quick little outro here. So I did something a little different with this video, as I'm sure you can tell. This was entirely unscripted. I had an outline, and I was just going off that. I knew what I wanted to talk about, but not exactly what I was going to say, and I just went with it. So I'm doing this largely because I want to make content talking about the game, but the scripting process always drags me down. I just find it really boring if it's not like machinima or comedy or something like that. So I think this could theoretically let me make more videos, but I would be curious what you all think about it. Is this entertaining? Is this interesting? Is it fun? Is it a good time? I don't have more questions. But yeah, just let me know what you think about it. It's been interesting, and I might do more of it. We'll see. All right. I guess if you're new here, subscribe. I guess I might make content. We'll see. It's part of the fun. You never really know. But yeah, I will see you all later. I'm gonna go play some more Dragonflight. I will see you later. I already said that. Goodbye.